I talk exclusively with former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich.
That statement, this is effing gold and I'm not taking it up for nothing. You can't answer the next question. What came after that?
He's a corrupt guy. He deserved what he got. Trump wants to let him out. Fine.
Author and host of No Spin News, Bill O'Reilly weighs in on the president's decision to commute Blagojevich's sentence and others. Plus, Democrats take their fight for 2020 to Nevada. One new opponent will be on the stage. And I get a big update on an American couple quarantined on a cruise ship due to coronavirus. Who is infected and who is now back in the U.S. That and so much more.
I'm a Trumpocrat.
The Trumpocrat, that's right.
Are you going to vote for him?
If I have the ability to vote, I'm going to vote for him.
Right now in America this week. Welcome to America This Week. It's the hottest new political show broadcast across the nation. I'm Eric Bolling, and my goal is to hold the mainstream media and the powerful accountable by following the money and asking those tough questions they're just not used to being asked. The numbers is a subject of the memo tonight. The numbers. 700 million Chinese under travel restrictions as the virus continues to spread globally, and our economy is resilient given the dangers of coronavirus becoming a pandemic, meaning it grows to epidemic proportions on a global stage, not just China. So why are we so fortunate to have such a robust economy? The numbers. Gasoline is only $2.44 per gallon nationally. Now, that's great news to an economy that relies on gas and oil to fuel its economic growth. Growth is a robust 2%, and inflation nowhere in sight. That's pure jet fuel to our mega economic engine. President Obama pried himself away from his Hollywood producer trailer to take credit for the economy this week. I had to laugh out loud at 44's delusional recollection. The economy recovered in spite of Obama, not because of him. The numbers. Who can forget his trillion-dollar stimulus package that was exposed to create shovel-ready jobs? It was supposed to. The numbers. Who can also forget the fact that the trillion-dollar taxpayer money Obama spent went to his pals in the green energy space and other wasteful deals he made? Remember a smug President Obama admitting he wasted our money, laughing all the way to the bank?
Shovel-ready was not as shovel-ready as we expected.
The only number that really matters, though, is 3. There are 3 reasons America is the economic global power that we are. Number 1, we're blessed with a stunning amount of natural resources, oil, gas, fertile soil. It allows us to be beyond self-sufficient in food and energy. Number 2, we're blessed by our geography. The fact that we're bordered on 2 sides by ocean is a huge advantage to those who would consider an attack on the United States. And number 3, our free market capitalism is the economic system that generates $21 trillion per year. Cheap fuel, ample food supply, geographically positioned perfectly. These need to be protected. Fortunately, thanks to the free market system that generates abundant resources, we can afford a strong military to protect all our gifts. If a foreign country tries to overtake our country, we'd fight for it, right? Of course we would. That'd be foolish on their part for all the reasons I noted above. By the numbers, though, 0. What if we were to just give it all away for free? Well, by voting for socialists, they'll take down the economy by taking out incentives and competition and innovation. By eliminating risk, socialism welcomes mediocrity. Socialism has never worked anywhere. It's actually responsible for hundreds of millions dying of starvation over the decades. So think about that tonight as you lay your head on the pillow. Are we willing to give this prosperity away without a fight? I'll tell you what, count me as a firm no way. And new numbers out today show a major shift happening in the race for the White House that puts Bernie Sanders very much in the driver's seat. This comes as Democrats square off in Sin City for their 9th debate. Sinclair's chief political correspondent, Scott Thuman, is in Vegas. What's up, Scott?
Yeah, Eric, as you know, timing is everything in politics, and right now it's working out well for Bernie Sanders. Those poll numbers, not just in that ABC News Washington Post one, but really across the board, we've seen this inverse action here where Joe Biden a few months ago was really on top and had a pretty nice little lead as far as who Democrats believed had the best chance to beat Donald Trump. That's changed. Now it's Bernie Sanders, and by double digits. What does it show? It shows that these debates have an impact. It shows those first 2 states had an impact, and that if Bernie Sanders can capitalize on that momentum that he's really feeling right now, he could potentially seal the fate of some of his candidates very quickly. In a city where taking a gamble can pay off handsomely or leave you empty-handed, candidates may be tempted to bet big in Vegas, and it seems almost all of them are doubling down.
We're going to Nevada.
Nevada.
It appears more pressing because there's shifting. The top tier looks different, and the one-time frontrunner, Joe Biden, only has a 4th and 5th place finish to his name, meaning he needs a Vegas performance worthy of the Strip.
The measure of success is not whether you get knocked down, how many times you get knocked down. It's how quickly you get up. Just get up.
He is the latest in a long line of people that official Washington thinks voters should like, and their campaigns crumble on first contact with voters. Jeb Bush comes to mind in that category. A lot of people 4 years ago who were convinced Jeb Bush is obviously going to be the Republican nominee. And then the voters got involved and said no.
Biden, the only candidate who has never appeared in the post-debate spin room. Simone, will the vice president ever come to the spin room?
Maybe.
For others, the challenge is showing they resonate beyond Iowa and New Hampshire and connect with a more diverse and heavily working-class electorate, a place where so far Bernie Sanders' populist message has.
Our campaign is about creating an economy and a government that works for all of us.
Say, Amy, you just got my vote.
And as Amy Klobuchar proved from the last debate, if you shine brightly in this city, it could be a political jackpot. And because there is never a dull moment in Las Vegas, all eyes tonight are going to be on Mike Bloomberg. How does he withstand some of the attacks that are certain to come? His competition has not been shy about going after him, saying essentially he's bought his way into this election. They've been kind of waiting for an opportunity not just to do this with commercials and on the campaign trail, but to face have that conversation. He'll get that chance tonight. And Eric, I'm sure it'll be pretty spirited at times.
Scott, it's fascinating because typically the front runner gets most of the heat in these debates. That would be Bernie Sanders based on the new polling. Mm-hmm. But this time you have Bloomberg in there. I mean, who do they go after? How do they split their shots at both of the front runner and the newcomer?
Yeah, I think they do. I think you're right. I think they will split it because remember, while they want to attack Bloomberg, who's the moderate option to a Joe Biden type, Bernie Sanders is still the one who's got the wins under his belt right now that they know has good numbers here in Nevada right now. He's got some pretty decent numbers in South Carolina, showing him actually neck to neck with Joe Biden in a state that's supposed to be Joe Biden's firewall. So yes, I think that they've got to go after him. You heard the mild-mannered Pete Buttigieg just this week, and Amy Klobuchar, others say that it is dangerous for Democrats to choose someone who's seen as a quote-unquote socialist. So I think that they're going to have to continue to attack him. How effective it may be, we don't know, because so far it really hasn't worked out that well for them.
All right, Scott, thank you very much. We'll keep our eye on that one. Should be an interesting debate tonight. Thank you, Scott. He was just released from federal prison in Colorado thanks to President Trump. Former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich joins me now. Governor, welcome to freedom. You were freed. You call yourself a freed political prisoner. You call yourself a victim. Explain that, please.
Well, I was sent to prison for 14 years, and thank God that President Trump saw the injustice and did what he does, and that is he acts to undo an injustice. For practicing politics. I was sent to prison for doing what everybody in politics does and necessarily has to do, and that is seeking to raise campaign contributions. It is legal. It is protected by the Constitution through the First Amendment. It is routine and it is necessary, so long as when you make the request for campaign contributions, you promise nothing and threaten no one. And I did none of those things. There was never any evidence that did those things. I was convicted because prosecutors who were dishonest moved the line so that they could fit the facts to ensure a conviction when, in fact, the law that was applied against me was not the law, as the United States Supreme Court said in the case of McCormick versus the United States. And so if the standard that was applied to me, it's a flimsy, unlawful standard that was applied to me, were to be applied to anybody else in politics, every senator, every congressman, every mayor, every governor would have been sent to prison as I've been.
You know, I think President Trump tweeted exactly that if that were the standard, But we know sometimes we have a let's call it bifurcated justice system where some people are treated one way and others are treated the other. But you were an official. You were a governor of one of the most important liberal states in the country, yet you were prosecuted. And so you think the prosecutors, the federal prosecutors and a jury who found you guilty got it wrong?
Well, we had two trials. The first trial, I wasn't convicted. They took me to a second trial, and what they did at the second trial was they actually changed the rules, and they used jury instructions at the second trial that were not used in the first trial. And they expressly did jury instructions that actually took away from me what the law provides to anybody who's in politics and who seeks to raise campaign contributions. Under the unlawful standard used against me, everybody in the United States, Senate, Congress, the other governors and the mayors, as I've said, would have faced the same consequences I did. And I think what this really underscores, and I think what we're beginning to see as Americans, is that those who succeeded at doing at the AAA level to a Democratic governor, many of the same people have been trying to do it at the major league level to a Republican president. And this is much larger than President Trump or me or anybody in political or public office. This is really about the right of the people to self-government. It's as fundamental as that. It's about the voters' rights to choose their own leaders through free and fair elections. And if they don't like what we're doing, throw us out of office in the next election. But these unelected, unaccountable, lawless prosecutors and many of these deep state bureaucrats who've taken it upon themselves to decide who should or shouldn't be president or governor, these are the people that are the ones who are threatening our freedoms. And if we don't get this right, if we don't fix what they've done, it won't be long before they will choke the life out of our democracy and steal our freedoms from us.
You know, you mentioned the deep state, and frankly, that's what's been going on. Now, you've been away for 8 years, and I'm sure you kept up on the political news, but there are some who believe that there is some sort of deep state that would, and what the way that works is exactly what happened to you, where there's a group inside federal law enforcement or law enforcement who is playing politics. Have we politicized the FBI, the DOJ, to the extent where they can remove people and put people in offices?
I think I'm living proof of that. That's what they did to me. I still believe it's a handful of certain people. I think they're all using the same playbook, and I think you'll see that they're all connected. And what they do is they misuse and abuse their powers. They're cloaked under the law with sovereign immunity, so nobody can touch them. But they're the ones that United States Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer warned about when he said that unelected prosecutors who are uncontrollable are a threat to our separation of powers. And that's precisely what the very same people who did it to me, many of them have been trying to do to President Trump. They turn things that are routine and legal, and they suddenly say they're illegal. They give them fancy names like Russian collusion or the sale of the Senate seat because it captures the attention of the public. They get a media that runs with the story, and they trip over themselves so they can all get the story because they don't want the other media outlet to outdo them.
Allow me to just, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I want to get this. I have so many questions for you, and I have a limited amount of time. You know, how did you get out? So I saw that you wrote a couple op-eds, and it was likely for the president's purview, audience of one, I get it. But what was the process to getting the attention of President Trump to actually get you out of jail?
Well, you know, we went through many staggering disappointments, my family and I, expecting that we'd ultimately prevail on the law. We unfortunately weren't able to get the Supreme Court to take the case. They only take 2% of cases. It's hard to get there. And then all of a sudden, this young man came into our lives who I've never talked to, I never met, named Mark Vargas. And he got a hold of my wife, Patty, and he's been a guardian angel for us for the last nearly 2 years. And he's helped us to shepherd through this process by trying to get the attention of people who might actually take a second look at what was done to me. You know, it's a pretty lonely thing when you find yourself in prison having to serve a 14-year prison sentence, and you know the truth is on your side. And you know that the people who have the power who did this to you are covering up the truth because they know what they did, and you can't get anybody to look into it. And then all of a sudden, this young man came into our lives, and he's kind of steered us through this process, and he caught the attention of President Trump and others, like Chris Ruddy, who I want to express my deepest appreciation to, Bernie Kerik, an American hero who knows what it's like to be treated as I've been. And all of a sudden, here I am. And all I can tell you is
I understand. I
see the hand of God in it.
Full disclosure, I know for a long time, great guy. He also is very knows Jared Kushner very well, Ivanka Trump. So this makes a lot of sense. But let me ask you this, and I have to do this because I have to ask you, because you are on tape saying I have this thing of value, and there was maybe an intent, maybe non-intent. But how do you explain? I mean, there were a lot of people who thought it was wrong. Is it that your sentencing was wrong, or the conviction was wrong?
Oh, the conviction was wrong. Everything I talked about doing, everything I did was legal, and on the right side of the line. That statement, this is effing gold, and I'm not taking it up for nothing. You can't answer the next question: what came after that? And the reason you can't answer that is because those very prosecutors went to court and put a gag order on the rest of those tapes. They cherry-picked conversations out of context, and they created a bad picture and a false narrative. And I wasn't allowed to.
Tell me what did. Here's an opportunity. You're going to talk to the entirety of America right here. What came after that? Explain what your rationale was.
Well, I have to tell you from my own independent recollection, because I'm still under a court order where I can't tell you what's on those tapes. Those people are still covering up those tapes. Tape recordings they made, tape recordings that prove that everything I'm saying is true. That's why they're covering it up. But I'll tell you exactly what happened after that. I said that because I remember it. I joked about my nephew Alex, at the time was turning 29, and I said to the guy on the phone, too bad he wasn't 30, I could give him a U.S. Senate seat as a birthday present. It was a joke. And this effing golden not for nothing, I meant a political deal. And by the way, that conversation came about because an emissary from President-elect Obama came to me and said, we'd like to talk to you about a Senate seat. We'd like to know what you're interested in doing and what you might want. And so, you know, what they did was they just took these things out of context and put me in that position where I can't get the truth out. And, you know, Winston Churchill said, a lie travels halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to put its pants on. And I've been trying for years to try to get the truth out. Eventually, I still believe at the end of the day, like Dr. Martin Luther King said, truth crushed to earth will rise again.
All right, Rod Blagojevich, thank you very much. Again, full disclosure, I've known Rod a long time. We did some interviews back before he was incarcerated, and he was my governor for a couple of years. When I've been 35 years, I lived in Chicago. Rod Blagojevich, thank you very much. We will get you back on. I'm sure you're going to be a very sought-after media person, and we're really looking forward to seeing what 2.0, Blagojevich 2.0 looks like.
Listen, Eric, thank you. And I want to just remind you, when I was your governor, I never raised your taxes.
Boom. Leave it right there. Governor, thank you very much. Host of the podcast, No Spin News, and my good friend Bill O'Reilly is here. Welcome, Bill. Thank you for joining us again. Big day in the news. President Trump has decided to do some pardoning and some excusing of some people. Can we just start with the Blagojevich pardon? What are your thoughts on that?
Does anybody care? I mean, I guess Mrs. Blagojevich cares. Do I care? No. He spent 9 years in prison. He's a corrupt guy. He deserved what he got. Trump wants to let him out. Fine. I'm not a vengeful person, but I think it's a one-day story and doesn't affect anybody but the Blagojevich family.
Can I push you? I'm going to beg to differ with you, Mr. Bill O'Reilly. I think a lot of people care.
Right.
A lot of people would say that getting 14 years, which is the original sentence, for attempting to sell a seat, not actually selling the seat, attempting to, is excessive.
Nah, come on. The guy's the governor of the state, Bolling. What's the matter with you? I mean, you gotta punish corruption. But he didn't sell the seat, Bill. He said, boy, I got this thing of value, a seat, Obama's vacated Senate seat, never actually followed through it. I'm just playing a little devil's advocate here. I hate corruption as much as you do, but I mean, is the right word. The guy's corrupt. He got 14. They let him out in 9. I don't think anybody should have a beef about it, one way or the other.
All right, Bernie Kerik got let go too, or he got a pardon as well. What do you think of that?
Well, he's a much lower bar there. I know Kerik, you know him. I think he served 3 years. I think that was fine. And what President Trump did was he wiped the record clean.
Expunged.
It's a symbolic act in Kerik, whereas Blagojevich got out.
Yeah.
Kerik had served his time. and so he wipes it clean.
So,
again, I don't have any beef on this at all.
So, okay, now there are those who'd like to read the tea leaves here. President Trump decides to let 11 people go or expunge people, records, on the heels of a sentencing of one of his close associates, advisors in the past, Roger Stone. Was it a hat tip or a heads up to the Department of Justice saying, if you give this guy too much, I'm going to pardon him too?
He's going to pardon him anyway. He can give him 15 minutes, and Stone will be pardoned. That's obvious that's going to happen because President Trump believes the whole thing was contrived. The whole Russia collusion thing from the very beginning was a contrived action. It brought in the FBI. They put people under pressure. Some of those people lied, Flynn, Stone, and it should have never happened in the first place.
So, Bill,
so
Flynn, Stone, maybe Manafort, they're accused of lying to the FBI.
No, not Manafort. Manafort is much bigger than that. Manafort was running a bunco scheme and tens of millions of dollars involved. Manafort's not going to get out. But Stone will get pardoned, in my opinion.
Okay.
And so,
but they'll get convicted, right? Stone has already been convicted. He's going to jail, at least for 15 minutes, as you point out, before he gets pardoned. And we know Flynn is a similar situation. Yet when Andrew McCabe lies, or James Comey lies, or Hillary Clinton lies, there doesn't seem to be a problem within the Department of Justice. What's going on here?
I don't know if that's accurate. Look, I understand the perception that the Inspector General of the Justice Department said in his report that Andrew McCabe lied. All right? So McCabe could have been prosecuted. So this comes under discretion. So Attorney General Barr decided not to. Why? He hasn't explained it yet, Bolling. You don't know, I don't know. He has to testify, does Mr. Barr, in front of a House committee in the end of March. You know Republicans are going to ask just the question you asked me, and Barr's going to have to answer it. Now,
that's all well and good, Bill. But boots on the ground where the rubber hits the road. I hate all these little mannerisms. But the bottom line is there are people on the right who are in jail or facing serious jail time, and when it seems to be the accused on the left of the similar crimes, let's say, they seem to walk.
About to explain before the boots and the rubber came in, I was just about to explain that he could have made a deal. That McCabe could have made a deal.
Good point.
You don't know. We don't know.
Well, maybe he got offered a deal, Bill. I guess what? Maybe Stone would have made a deal if he were offered one.
Okay, maybe. I don't know. I know if I were a congressman in either party and I had Attorney General Barr sitting before me under oath, I would ask the exact same question that you'd ask me. And then Barr would have to answer it and will have to answer it, and then we'll know.
All right. About a minute or so, Bill. You've had the killing series. How about the Bill O'Reilly killing the coronavirus? Maybe that's your next book.
I did a radio commentary on this today, pointing out that because the government of Beijing, the communist government, doesn't have to be accountable to anyone. I mean, what they say goes, that this virus got out of control, that she knew about it 2 weeks before he told anybody. And that's what happens in totalitarian countries, in communism and socialism and all of that. Now, they did clamp down on it because, again, you have no rights if you're a Chinese citizen. None. Zero. I don't think Americans really understand that. All right? So the coronavirus is China's fault, and let's hope it subsides.
And let's certainly hope it wasn't some sort of biological weapon testing that was going on that actually leaked. Bill O'Reilly, thank you very much again. The No Spin No Spin News podcast. Always good to see you, Bill.
Same.
Bye. All right, ahead on an update on the American couple trapped on a cruise ship. They were quarantined off the coast of Japan. He's now off the ship, but now stuck on a military base in California. What he said life is like after the coronavirus is coming up.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers rough and tumble political arguments.
On the left, this new embrace of socialism. The whole thing is ridiculous.
Hard-edged opinions.
The media let Joe Biden get away with his first big lie.
They can come after me all they want, but they're going to have to kill me if they want me to stop defending the president.
Tough topic debates.
Destabilization in the Middle East, more chaos and more terrorism.
Unless we get away from all of this hatred, we're going to destroy ourselves.
We have to solve the border problems.
The wall is a big chunk of what we're talking about.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Investigate stories revealing toxic forever chemicals in water supplies.
My family was poisoned. My child was poisoned. I have been poisoned.
There he is, over here, straight ahead.
Chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
Cartels, rape, gangs, and violence.
So you guys are both hitmen?
America This Week investigates the facts and the falsehoods and relentless.
Last week, I spoke with Jerry and Mark Jorgensen. Both were in quarantine aboard the Diamond Princess cruise ship off the coast of Japan. Just days later, Jerry was diagnosed with the coronavirus. Now, she remains in a hospital in Japan, and her husband, Mark, was flown to a base in California. He joins us now via Skype. Mark, thank you for speaking with us again. First of all, how is Jerry doing?
She seems to be doing well. She has no symptoms. They actually did a test on her today, and that showed up negative. They're telling her if she has another one, then she will be released from the hospital. Mm-hmm. So she will not be able to come home, unfortunately.
And what about you? Are you showing any signs of flu or fever or anything?
No, it's not at all.
Okay.
No, they take my temperature twice a day, and it's always normal.
So we were talking a week ago, and I asked you, are you concerned about getting the coronavirus? You said no, and then within a couple of days after that, Jerry was diagnosed with it. Any thoughts? Did you change your mind? I asked you also at the end that what your feelings on cruising, on doing cruises. Do you change your mind now that she contracted coronavirus?
Well, obviously, I've changed my mind about my risk of being exposed. Karma is funny that way sometimes. But no, it hasn't changed my mind about cruising. In fact, I've got one planned in May with my kids that are graduating. We've had this plan for quite a while to do something with them for a celebration. And despite all this, that's not going to change.
Okay, all right. Again, shake my head, but whatever. So now Jerry is in quarantine in Japan. She had to stay back. Tell us what's going on with that.
Well, with a positive diagnosis, they have to, of course, keep her isolated. And her symptoms went away immediately. She did have a fever the day before they took her. But that went away the next day, and she's really been symptom-free the whole time she's been there, which is now, 4 or 5 days. And she's just been bored out of her mind, just hanging out in the hospital, and they're delivering food to her it's not something she's used to, and she's struggling to get enough to eat, and no one speaks a lick of English. But they're very kind to her and treating her very well. And they did give her some news yesterday that if she tests 2 days in a row negative, then she can be released from the hospital. And she's already done one of those, and it was negative, and so she's excited to be able to.
What about you, Mark? What about you? How are they checking you, and who's keeping track of that?
They're just taking my temperature twice a day. That's it.
Who?
They're military people. I imagine they were under contract with the CDC, or I don't know who they are. They're in uniform.
And so you're in quarantine in America.
I'm in Travis Air Force Base in California.
Okay,
yes.
so when can you go home?
2 weeks. 2 weeks from Monday, so 12 more days.
Very interesting, very interesting. And this hasn't changed your mind about cruises. We literally have a doctor on who's decided to go on a cruise ship. Do you see the numbers? And when we talked, within a week of talking, the numbers went from around 200 cases to over 500 just on your ship alone.
Yeah, I don't know the science behind it. I'm not an epidemiologist, but I don't know. I kind of have the philosophy that life's to be lived, and something could happen. So,
all right. Well, listen,
options.
We want to wish Sherry the best, and we want to wish you the best. Appreciate your time. We'll check in with you again, maybe when you're all are back in your own home again. Mark and Jerry Jorgensen, thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome.
He's the president and founder of Palmetto Clinical Research and a fellow of the American College of Physicians. And right now, he's aboard a cruise ship. Dr. Colby Grossman, thank you for joining. By the way, full disclosure, my personal doctor, Doc, what the heck are you doing with your wife, Fran, on a cruise ship?
Hey, listen, you know, it's 100% safe down here. We're in the DR, and very little chatter about coronavirus or COVID-219, as we're calling it nowadays.
Well, so last week we had a couple on, and we're going to talk to them also. We talked to them. They were kind of in the same boat you are right now. They're feeling pretty good about where they were. They happened to be on that ship in Japan that was quarantined. Turns out the wife caught the coronavirus. Are you concerned about catching anything?
Well, you know, there's been 75,000 cases of coronavirus globally. 94% of them have been in the Hubei province. And there's only been 15 cases in the United States, actually 14 within the United States. One citizen died in China. So I think numbers are really, really small. And I think that's the reason that there's such little alarm right now, is because globally there's just very little concentration of the coronavirus, especially in this part of the world.
Anecdotally, Colby, almost every other commercial now on most of cable news and local news is an ad for a cruise line. They're feeling the pinch. A lot of people decided not to take cruises, are pulling back. Also, anecdotally, I'm in an Uber ride on the way over here to the studio today, and the Uber driver's talking to someone who said that he's working at the docks in Miami, and the cruise ships are leaving with sometimes 10 or 15% boarded. In other words, 85% are empty right now. Should we not be concerned about an epidemic and/or pandemic?
So I think at this point in time, just because the incidence is so small, I think being overly concerned is definitely not the course I would take. But it is a droplet-borne illness. So obviously just routine care, washing down surfaces if you're in a strange place or a hotel room, that really is the main thing. And if you're on an airplane, this is not an airborne illness. This is a droplet illness. So any surface you touch, if you touch your mouth or nose, it should be like anything. I think we should be more worried about the flu right now, because we've had almost 14,500 deaths in the United States from the flu. And that also is a droplet-borne illness. So I think routine care, being diligent about making sure that the surfaces that we touch are clean and that we wash our hands after we touch surfaces before we touch our mouth or nose is probably the most prudent thing to do.
All right, Colby, we'll check in with you again. Appreciate your time. Best to Fran. Again, my doctor, Dr. Colby Grossman.
Yeah, thanks, folks.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Ahead, I talk with former Deputy National Press Secretary of the Democratic Party, Jose Aristimuño, about the rivalry between Mayor Mike Bloomberg and Senator Bernie Sanders. But first, are you sick and tired of representatives in D.C. ignoring you? Are you ticked off because you feel like you're being taxed without representation? Well, here's a chance to be heard. Call this number, 888-601-0032. Follow @WeHearYou on Twitter. Your voice could be heard online, on radio, and even right here on TV. Last week, we received over 1,000 rants. Here are just a couple.
Phyllis Sayers from Spokane, Washington. Patty Murray, you are lazy, you're nothing, and you are doing nothing for our state, city, county, or the United States.
Proud Latina, Sylvia Canataro voted for Vice President in 2016 and will re-elect him again.
Jerry Miller, Spare America. Why don't we drug test some of these politicians, or at least give them breathalyzers before they walk into my house?
All right, I want to make sure, this is so awesome. I absolutely love this, Brad. I want to make sure your voice is heard in the swamp. In case you missed that number, here it is again, 888-601-0032. Follow me or follow that group right there, @HearYou. Stay tuned for more. All right, let's go to the former Deputy National Press Secretary of the Democratic Party, Jose Aristimuño. It appears, Jose, the big fight right now is between an up-and-coming Michael Bloomberg and Bernie Sanders, who both look very, very strong at the expense of Biden. Tell me about the two, Bloomberg and Sanders.
Well, look, I mean, if we've learned something, money talks, right? Whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, I think Michael Bloomberg has been able to put the right recipe, right? He's been able to put money not to buy the election, let me be very clear, not to buy the election, but to buy exposure, to buy advertisement. There are rumors that he's buying close to $1 million to even get the nomination. So that's on Bloomberg. And then if we go to Sanders, I mean, look, I think the Democrats will have, they will be in big trouble if they get Sanders to be the nominee. And here's why. Because the message that the Republicans are going to hammer on day after day, it's going to be Sanders is going to turn the United States into Venezuela. Now, look, I think that couldn't be farther from the truth. I think Sanders wouldn't do that, or not even close. And I think the socialism that perhaps Sanders is trying to put together for the United States is not what happens in Cuba. It's not what happens in Venezuela. But if he is the nominee, it's going to be tough for the Democrats to win the White House.
It's a kinder, gentler socialism, not the one that wipes out economies and kills and starves people to death. Is that what you're trying? Democratic socialism is a better form. By the way, it's never worked anywhere, Jose.
Look, it's worked in Europe. It's worked in Europe.
Where?
I mean, there's countries in Europe.
Where?
It's worked in Sweden. It's worked in plenty of countries in Europe.
I'm waiting to hear. Give me something. Give me Sweden. I mean, Sweden would love to have our growth rate and our economy. I mean, come on, Jose. I did my monologue on the difference between socialism and capitalism.
No, but you can't compare Sweden. You can't compare Sweden to Venezuela, and you know this. Completely different.
I'm saying, show me a place where socialism has ever thrived, or an economy thrived on socialism anywhere, anytime. I'm waiting.
Look, it's an argument that with me you're not going to debate, because I'm not. That's not my type of. I don't think we should do that. I think we should have a market capitalism system the way that we have here, but we should allow the government to play a certain role, a limited role, to make sure that we have safety, to help the ones that need the most help at the bottom. So I think
we got that.
Needed,
I mean, capitalism provides for that as well. The U.S. economic system provides for. It's called Social Security. There's Medicare. There's Medicaid. I mean, the people who are at the bottom of the economic spectrum are well taken care of. It's just when you get into socialism, Jose, you take the incentive away to innovate, to work harder to get more. If you work 100%. Harder and get the same amount, which is socialism, why work harder?
I get that. I get that, but let me say this. I get this. Republicans are trying to put Democrats into one single box and say every single Democratic
let's do this. Let's do this. I disagree. I think Donald Trump is wisely trying to push for a Bernie Sanders nomination. He wants to run against the socialists. We're seeing it. He's tweeting saying, hey, you're going to steal it from Bernie again like you did in 2016. He wants that as a nominee. Bloomberg for a second here. Michael Bloomberg is seen as the centrist. He was a Republican at one point. Now he's a Democrat or whatever he is now. He's seen as a centrist, but he's got some baggage with minorities, does he not?
I don't think so. I mean, if you're talking about the stop and frisk and things like this, every candidate's not perfect, right? I think he inherited some of these policies when he became mayor
but my friend, when I suggested that when de Blasio took stop and frisk away, I was the racist, because apparently if you're suspicious about a perp and you frisk them, you're a racist too. So when you suggest that, you're a racist. This is Michael Bloomberg saying, hey, we used stop and frisk to the very, very benefit of the city of New York City. Now he wants to walk away from it. He made mistakes. Well, guess what? He cleaned up New York using stop and frisk.
If we look, Eric, at his actions more than his words, we've seen what he's done to New York, reducing the crime rate. We've seen what he's done with the dreamers,
using stop and frisk, Jose.
Right?
Jose, you can't take credit for
one of the most progressive mayors.
Jose, you can't take credit for reducing the crime rate using a tactic and then say, oh, gee, I wish I never used that tactic, but I'm really glad we reduced the crime rate. He's got another problem too. There's a new video surfacing where he actually calls transgender people by he, she, it. And that's going to, he's taking shots. I just don't understand how the Democrat Party is okay when Democrats who are running for president do these things. And God forbid Trump or a Republican said those things, their head would be on a stick.
He needs to apologize for mistakes he's done in the past. I think we've learned something from President Trump, Eric, is that he has raised the standard on how to be not a politician and how to go out of the norm. Right? You remember the tape when he said he wanted to grab woman by the, you know what? So don't get, I think this is nonsense.
Fair argument. Fair argument. Jose Aristimuño, thank you very much. Ahead, we're discussing the Democratic presidential candidates in Nevada. Our panel of experts breaks down the latest in the race. Stay with us.
And then you'll go to the Hispanics and the blacks.
And then the segment will be over.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
One of his surrogates called
Sebastian.
more social.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Dr. G has my level.
Jennifer.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Jenny Talk.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay, let's hear from both sides of the aisle here, going head-to-head. Political commentator Amisha Cross, former deputy assistant to President Trump, host of America First on Salem Radio, and author of his newly released book, The War for America's Soul, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Attorney and Democratic strategist Jennifer Holdsworth, and founder of the Fight Impeachment Now Coalition, and Tea Party Patriots, Jenny Beth Martin. Jenny, I just recognized we used to do stuff at Fox earlier,
yes.
didn't we? 1 second. Here's what I want to do. I want to start with the two leaders on the debate stage tonight. Let's start with Bloomberg, and as I referenced with Jose Aristimuño, this comment that he made on transgenders. Watch.
If your conversation during a presidential election is about some guy wearing a dress and whether he, she, or it can go to and go to the locker room with their daughter, that's not a winning formula for most people.
Amisha, let's talk about it. So now he's going to have to apologize for that. I'm sure he's going to get called on the debate stage. Sebastian, in the break, pointed out some of the other things that he's had to apologize for. How many excuses are they going to make for this guy?
So I don't think that the other candidates on the stage are going to be making excuses for him at all. Tonight, Bloomberg is going to be a major target. One of the issues I think that Bloomberg has to overcome is the fact that a lot of these statements weren't made 5, 10, 15 years ago. A lot of the things that are being unearthed were just last year. These are conversations that he has regularly.
Stop and frisk.
And that's a very difficult thing to try to overcome. If he wasn't able to funnel the amount of money that he is across, particularly the African American demographic, he gave over $3 million to the black press, I think that we would see a much different type of race.
Money. Sebastian, here's the situation the Democrats are in. Biden is sliding. He's falling off the edge of the earth. So they got to go with someone who's not Bernie, because they know they can't win with Bernie. And Bloomberg is the guy, but he has so much baggage.
Tonight it's fascinating. We have the Bolshevik versus the billionaire. And this is the billionaire who has the charisma of an old shoe. And we have audio after audio after audio. I used the one yesterday on the show where he insulted all farmers in America. He said farming is putting a seed in the ground, in the dirt, and watering it. That's all farming is. He said if you work in a factory, you put a piece of metal in the lathe and turn the handle in the direction of the lathe.
Glad you clarified that.
This is unbelievable. Who has he not annoyed? Oh, and then the audio of young black men and Latinos
Yes.
don't know how to get a job or keep it.
And that's why we put all the cops in their neighborhoods.
Is there anybody left apart from billionaires who might vote for this guy, the Democrat nominee?
What do you think, Jen?
I think I'm probably going to have to come back in a couple months and eat my hat for what I'm about to say, but I don't believe that Mayor Bloomberg will be the nominee. I think that there are a lot of problems. Now, look, he's pledged to support whoever the nominee is. I personally am supporting Mayor Pete. I think that right now he's leading in the delegate race, which is what you need to get in order to secure.
Who you're supporting, but who do you think is the right person
I think that Mayor
to put up
Pete can do it, but I also think that the obituaries of political obituaries of Joe Biden are very premature. I think that we've got South Carolina coming up, and I think that he's going to do extremely well.
I think Biden has a real challenge because people want to get behind a winner, a perceived winner, and right now he is not the perceived winner. And do you go to the polls and in South Carolina or the caucuses in Nevada and risk that you're voting for someone who's not going to win?
I don't know. I'll tell you who else is who's leading across all the polls. Take a listen to this guy's one of his surrogates talking about, yay, more socialism. Watch.
So I never say never because I do believe in
you
serving my country, but it's not going to happen.
Well, not that one. Let's go with the other. Come on, let's go with the yay socialism.
Definitely not a Bernie surrogate.
Do we have it? Do we have it?
We need a powerful socialist movement to end all capitalist oppression and exploitation.
So, Sebastian,
capitalist oppression. The freest country in the world where we have functionally zero unemployment. There are more jobs available, Eric, under Donald Trump than there are people looking for jobs, and that woman is oppressed. These people are proof that Trump derangement syndrome is real.
I don't know about Trump derangement syndrome, but the extent of people who are working the gig economy, people who are still living paycheck to paycheck, that is still a large group of folks. People who don't have health care because their jobs are not allocating that towards them. The majority of the new jobs that were created were jobs that are low-wage, part-time jobs, and we just have to be real about that.
Let me go with Jennifer. Now, you're shaking your head, you're nodding, and you're agreeing with Amisha, but I'll ask you the same question I asked Jose Ristamuño. Name me one country or system under socialism that's thrived, that's been a powerhouse, and that hasn't ended up in a disaster.
No, I can't. I think those comments are complete nonsense, and I think that they're a complete danger to the Democratic Party right now, and I resoundingly reject them. They deserve no place in this discourse whatsoever.
Jenny Beth, it's no wonder why they're trying to push away from Bernie, even though he's the popular guy.
Yeah, as Sebastian was pointing out, right now the economy is booming. Household income is increasing. Personal income is increasing. If you don't like the job that you have, go negotiate a better job for yourself or go find another job. There are more people looking for employees than there are people looking for jobs. So right now, if you're an employee, it's your time to set your terms.
Final thought. Who wants it? Sebastian.
It's like Donald Trump Jr. said when we launched the president's re-election campaign in Orlando last year, 2020 is a choice between liberty and socialism.
Final.
That's hilarious. No, I think that 2020 is definitely going to be a choice between American democracy or moving towards a dictatorship.
Under Bernie Sanders.
American democracy under a socialist Democrat.
Well, I don't think Bernie's going to get the nomination.
You meant Trump was the dictator. All right, going to leave right there. We'll be right back.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers rough and tumble political arguments.
On the left, this new embrace of socialism. The whole thing is ridiculous.
Hard-edged opinions.
The media let Joe Biden get away with his first big lie.
They can come after me all they want, but they're going to have to kill me if they want me to stop defending the president.
Tough topic debates.
Destabilization in the Middle East, more chaos and more terrorism.
Unless we get away from all of this hatred, we're going to destroy ourselves.
We have to solve the border problems.
The wall is a big chunk of what we're talking about.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. investigates stories revealing toxic forever chemicals in water supplies.
My family was poisoned. My child was poisoned. I have been poisoned.
There he is, over here, straight ahead.
Chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
Cartels, rape, gangs, and violence.
So you guys are both hitmen?
America This Week investigates the facts and the falsehoods and relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week.
America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, points out how rough and tumble politics shape opinion in every region in our country. We tell American stories, stories that touch our people, determine our politics, focus on the future of America.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week. All right, let's talk balls and strikes. We're joined by White House reporter for Politico, Gabby Orr, good friend. I wanted to call you senior White House reporter, but that's down the road a bit.
Hopefully.
Let's start with the news of the week, the pardons and the just kind of President Trump letting people go, getting their records expunged. Your thoughts on what's going on? What's behind all this?
I mean, number one, it's happening during an election cycle because the president wants to appeal to a broader base than he won in 2016, namely African-American voters. So if you look at the list of pardons that he issued earlier this week or sentence commutations, a lot of them were for nonviolent drug offenders. This is a group of individuals who he's talked a lot about in the context of criminal justice reform. Jared Kushner has obviously been behind the scenes really pushing for a lot of these things. And so it is part of the campaign strategy.
It's kind of interesting to see, you know, when he decided he wanted to pull troops out of Afghanistan, the Democrats are like, wait a minute. And all of a sudden, he's putting Democrats in a footing that they're not used to, like almost like a pro-war footing with something like that. Or in this case, you're right, it's criminal justice reform. Are Democrats going to fight Trump letting someone out of jail early?
No, it does put them in somewhat of a bind because, you know, you don't want to be out there saying, well, this is not something that the president should be doing if they truly believe that nonviolent drug offenders shouldn't be in prison in the first place, which many of the Democrats have said on the debate stage and as part of their policy portfolios.
Some people say that this may be a preemptive, let's call it strike to the DOJ, saying you better not give Roger Stone a ton of time or I'm going to take it, you know. I'm going to take legs out of that.
There's a lot of chatter in Trump world right now about Roger Stone and what will happen with the sentencing.
Bernie versus Bloomberg. This is fascinating to me. So as Bloomberg bubbles up, which we kind of predicted he would do that, Biden is dropping. But this whole difference between Bernie, the outsider, and now Bloomberg, looks like he's going to be the insider, the establishment Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, we are heading into the first debate where you'll see Mike Bloomberg on stage. It's going to be a populist candidate versus a plutocrat, basically. And it's a fascinating dynamic because for the first time in this race on the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders really has the personification of everything that he's running against on stage, ready to attack him, and he being ready to go on offense against Bloomberg. I do think that the more Bernie Sanders rises in the polls, and just today we saw him, I believe, at 32% nationally among Democratic primary voters.
There have been several polls that were released this week that show him, Bernie Sanders, is the front runner.
He is
which is interesting because I think this is what playing into the Trump campaign. They seem to want to run against Bernie because they're all over Twitter saying, "Hey, they're going to steal it from me again, Bernie," and it's got the Bernie bros really fired up.
Well, I can tell you from my own reporting that there are definitely campaign insiders who want President Trump to face off against Bernie Sanders in the fall, and then there are some who think that Bernie Sanders might actually be the most competitive Democrat, that he appeals to blue-collar workers, that he has younger enthusiasm behind him in a way that President Trump does not, and so there is sort of a divisiveness inside the Trump campaign over what Bernie Sanders' election viability would actually be.
How do the Democrats explain this? Now we're down to 6 candidates. They're all white. They're primarily upper in age, with the exception of Buttigieg and maybe Amy Klobuchar, but generally older white people. I mean, how do they explain that away?
It's a tough one. I mean, right now it's I would say a three-way race between three cis white male septuagenarians, and then Buttigieg, if you want to count him. It's
so cis white male septuagenarians, folks. It's almost like
I'm using the language that the party uses.
Skim latte with soy milk and some sweetener.
Well, I'm just trying to illustrate how difficult it is for the Democratic Party to claim that they are the party of diversity and tolerance when the three people representing the standard bearers of the Democratic Party right now are old white men. It does pose a problem for them in terms of optics. And I think the closer, one last point, the closer we get to the convention, if Mike Bloomberg is still at the top of this race competing against Bernie Sanders, that introduces an entirely different optics problem to have a billionaire essentially buying his way to the nomination.
Yeah, you're amazing. Oh, look at that. Bernie Sanders says millionaires and billionaires, and he's up against one.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to knock the crap out of each other. And Trump is just going to sit back and go, okay, well, whoever's left standing is going to be pretty weakened.
Absolutely. I think the Trump campaign is already doing that. They're just kind of sitting back and waiting for the moderate wing of the Democratic Party to basically cannibalize itself.
Well, we're going to leave it right there. Gabby Orr, future senior reporter for Politico. I love Politico. I love these guys, too, as well. White House reporter for Politico. Thank you, Gabby.
Thanks, Eric.
And that's a wrap from the D.C. Swamp. No millionaires and billionaires here. See you next week, everyone. I'm Eric Bolling. Bye.